Hello, I'm Professor Lieu, here today with art prof teaching artists Jordan McCracken-Foster and Kat Huang. Welcome to our video where we talk about different topics in art. Today we are talking about people of color in character design. If you would like to grow as an artist, but you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof, critiques and tutorials. All right, we're going to get started by talking about some characters who are people of color, some of them from more recent movies, some of them from older ones. Here we are looking at Miles Morales, who is from the 2018 film Into the Spiderverse. And Kat, you wanted to start this conversation out with this thing called the Bechdel test, which is not specifically about race, but I guess we're going to use it as a reference. So can you explain to people what the Bechdel test is?
Sure. So a little history about the Bechdel test. It was made famous by a cartoonist named Alison Bechdel. It is a very simple three-step process. It's about women. So the first step is there are there two or more women characters in your story? The second step is do they talk to each other? And the third step is it something about anything other than a man. And it's a very simple test, but you'd be surprised how many things don't pass it. Now, we thought that we could switch it around and also make it about race because I think it can still be applicable. So, first step, are there two or more characters of color in your story? Two, do they talk to each other? And three, is it about something other than a white character? So, let's see how many things pass that test.
All right, we're going to start out with Avatar: The Last Airbender, which was a TV series that ran in 2005 to 2008. And Jordan knows a little bit about Avatar: The Last Airbender, just a little bit. And so, Jordan, I'm going to
Um,
let you introduce this character that we're going to talk about from Avatar.
okay, so the primary character we're going to be talking about is Katara, and in this world of Avatar, for those who don't know, it's a world where people can manipulate the four elements: water, air, earth, and fire. And Katara comes from the Southern Water Tribe, and she helps the protagonist Aang to basically save the world. So she acts as the support factor and a guide and a teacher for Aang throughout the entire series.
And Kat, why do you think that Katara is a person of color, a character that really mattered for you? Because this was probably something you watched growing up, right?
Actually, no. It got its run, and then later when I was older, I started watching it because I heard how good it was. And I do agree that it is amazing. Everyone should watch it. What really drew me to Katara and the Avatar universe was how different everyone looked. Like, clearly, they came from different countries, they're different races. And what's also interesting is that all these races are sort of made up. Like, Katara comes from the Water Tribe, and the Water Tribe doesn't exist in the real world. But we can see that it draws a lot of inspiration from maybe indigenous tribes and, I don't know, colder continents or something like that. And even though it's a made up race, we still see it as something very believable because we see it in the world today.
Tell us in the chat. Have you guys seen Avatar: The Last Airbender? Do you know Katara? What is your opinion of that character? Oh, wow, we got a first time person joining us live. Sam Patterson, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Art Prof family. Jordan, I think you did grow up watching Avatar: The Last Airbender. So, what was your first impression as a younger kid interacting with these characters?
So if by younger kid you mean
Okay,
14,
fine.
then uh, then I'll respond. No, but when I first saw it, I, like Kat, was just in love with the world that they created, and it's really great seeing characters, even if they're not, black or Mexican or whatever real world ethnicities you want to put on here, just to see brown characters have such a prominent role and them not be the villains is a really really amazing thing. And I know that a lot of people struggle with not seeing characters that look like them and have them be portrayed as something that they can look up to. And for me, I really enjoyed that, and it actually inspired me in a lot of ways. And it started uh, as an artist for myself. I started shifting some of the drawings I was doing to more people of color, and just not just because they look like me, because I see that's possible. And so I think opening the or expanding the horizons of what I wanted to do was increased in part by the show that was created.
Did you guys notice that as a young kid that wow, this is something that I'm not used to seeing, or is this something that you didn't realize until many many years later and you were an artist and really paying attention to stuff like that? I'm just curious about that.
For me, it was something I had to realize when I was older because, when you're surrounded by TV shows and movies and books and comics full of white people, like, you don't know anything different, right? And I remember a very specific memory when I was little. I was obsessed with American Dragon Jake Long. I don't know if anyone knows that animated show. It's a very old Disney show, but Jake Long, now that I think of it, is like the first Asian character I ever saw on television. And I think that's what attracted me so much to that series. And I only realized it when I was older.
Jordan, was that important to you as a kid, or did you not figure it out until later when you were really noticing and trying to pay attention to that?
I was very used to being the only black kid in my area because I went to a school that was, where I was a minority. And so it didn't really register to me till much, much later. And I think I might have been maybe 16 or 17 when I started like recognizing that there weren't many other shows or films that were doing this sort of thing and putting character people of color at the forefront. I think probably one of the first instances was the show The Boondocks. And to be fair, I was actually quite young when I saw that, probably a little too young to watch The Boondocks. I was like 12, 13. And I was like, whoa, these characters, they look like me. They represent, a lot of the culture that I'm part of. Not everything, because there's something that I don't agree with. But it's one of those shows that just, it stands out so much because of the look. And, it's kind of like watching The Simpsons for the first time in the sense that not the content itself, but you see these bright yellow characters and you're like, what is that? you know? And so, regardless of what you think of the show, it stands out to you when you see something like that. And so that's kind of how I felt with the show, like Avatar. And Kat mentioned that they're based off of a different race. And I think Katara and the Water Tribe is based off of the Inuits, Inuit people. And like if you look at their clothing and their architecture and all that, you could see all that influence in there.
Wow, we got a lot of people in the chat. Hello, Lux, Hansa, Casey, and Pennington Arts and 10,000 Crows. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And tell us in the chat, who are some characters who are people of color that had an influence on you, whether that's as an adult or as a child? We're going to only talk about 4 characters today, but I would love to hear some other characters that people are really looking at. Okay, well, let's take a look at Katara a little bit more specifically because I just found out who Katara was today. I don't know anything about this character. And so I'm wondering, why does Katara stand out for you? Because as we know, there's so many just bad stereotypes of people of color in movies and in shows and everything. So why did you choose Katara as an example for this stream? Jordan, you start.
You go.
Sorry.
Me? Okay. So one of the reasons I chose Katara is because she has a will of her own and she has her own desires, and sort of like the Bechdel test, is her purpose solely to be support for a man? Not really at all. I think her character arc is specifically meant for her to grow as a person. And so she starts off as the only waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe. She's never even met another waterbender. And then by the end of the series, she becomes this master who's able to teach the Avatar how to use his abilities. And she becomes one of the best teachers in the world. And she's like 14, and she's like going out and fighting all these fighters. Like she's just really awesome. And there's still, but she's still able to hold on to like who she is as a person. She's not this hardened like soldier. She's just regular 14-year-old girl with these awesome powers.
Kat, how does it make you feel when you see a character who's a person of color who's just a terrible stereotype? What's your reaction to something like that?
Unfortunately, that's something I see a lot of, like that I've seen a lot, that at this point I mean, for my own health, I just tune it out. Like, I try not to look at it too much. I try not to think about it too much. And yeah, what's like frustrating is that we have to address it every time we see it. And that's very exhausting for me and like anyone else who feels this similarly.
And Jordan, you had said to us earlier that there's always this one very specific stereotype of a black male character.
Um, one specific, like the token
No, the
character,
one
you
where
mean?
they like want
Like,
to be a
A
rapper or
rapper.
something.
oh yeah. So I'm working on a personal project where it takes influence from like hip hop and African culture, but when I was doing my research and looking up other projects that could be similar to it, a lot of times it was like about this dude, living in New York who wants to be a rapper specifically. And he's always like carrying a boom box or he's rapping in the middle of the sentences and he's like, yo, dog, what's good all the time. And it after a while, after about 15, 20 seconds of that, it just gets irritating. And you're like, that's not how everyone sounds. And to put that image out there as if that's a blanket statement for the entire culture, I think is very misleading. I think it can be very damaging, not only to people who are also black or whatever other culture you can insert name here, but people who are not of that culture as well. And I think it often gives a very misguided or interpretation of who these people are.
Well, and
You know.
also goes the other way because my daughters are half Asian and half Caucasian, but they have a pretty dark complexion like me. And one of my daughters, who's 10, she said to me, why are all the pretty women in the movies, why are they all blonde? Like she wanted to know why. And that was definitely something that she has already picked up, that if you are going to be the pretty lady in the movie, you have to be blonde. You can't be anything else. So that's just really like it just breaks your heart when you hear your kids say something like that. By the way, those of you who are interested in character design, we've got this wonderful tutorial with Kat in it. She demonstrates a wonderful technique with inking and Photoshop, and we have a whole playlist about character design. So we have a number of tutorials, we have some live streams and discussions, so check that out. Okay, the next character we're going to talk about is from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Kat, can you introduce Miles Morales to our audience?
Oh, okay. So Miles Morales is like, I guess, a form of Spider-Man. I mean, in different universes, Spider-Man is like a different person. In this universe, is Miles Morales, but a lot of us are used to Peter Parker. But in this case, Miles Morales is a half Puerto Rican, half black kid. And well, he like saves the world, I guess, as Spider-Man usually does.
Let's see, in the chat, SK Art is saying, as a brown female, unfortunately, growing up, I never really saw any brown representation in cartoons. And like you said, I only saw the pretty girls as blondes and Caucasian. Wow, thank you so much for sharing that, SK Art. Okay, well, Jordan, what's your take on Miles Morales? Because you're again a
Oh,
little obsessed with Spider-Verse. That's okay. Anyway, tell us about Miles and what type of impact his character has on you.
so what I really appreciate about Miles Morales is so it's very clear that he looks different than Peter Parker, right? From just the outside, he looks very different. But what I appreciate is they didn't make that just his character, like he's just black and he happens to be Spider-Man. It's more so that he is Spider-Man, but he just so happens to be mixed with black and Puerto Rican. And I think that makes a huge difference because it's not his race that's his character, it's Miles himself who's a character. You could and what they do with making him speak Spanish and putting him in certain environments he's in really makes him stand out as a brand new, unique character. And so I fell in love with it immediately when I saw the trailer.
Denon Robot is saying there's so few characters that are colored in animation. I feel when they do appear in animation, they're a racist, blatant stereotype. The 1950s comic book animation style of Spider-Verse is amazing. Well, can you guys comment, maybe Kat, can you shed some light on the actual design of Miles as a character? Because we're talking a lot about their representation and their race, but how does the actual design of Miles relate to his character?
I think what's really interesting about Miles is that his culture, his ethnicity, and race actually do inform his character in many ways. For instance, him being like half black, half Puerto Rican. I already felt that that was like not like a blanket representation of someone, you know? Sometimes when someone says, "Oh, this character is like Asian," like what flavor of Asian? Um, and I thought it was really interesting that Miles Morales actually has like this Latin heritage and can speak Spanish, and also like the way he interacts with his mother, who is Puerto Rican, and also the kinds of friends he's making. Those are all very specific designs for his character to show how colorful he is as a teenager. Like he's living an average teenage life, and it's a fun life, but it's also tough.
Jordan, how about your take on Miles's design? The way his figure is, his posture, the way he moves, his hair, those types of decisions that people have to make when they're designing characters.
I actually know a kid who's about Miles Morales' age. He's 14, and he is half black and half Latino. He looks exactly like Miles Morales, just like 5 inches taller. And like literally, like you could put him side by side. You could think he could play him in a live action film. It's crazy. And so I love that they were able to mix the aspects. His hair, first of all, is one thing. It's very clear that he's got really curly hair, and the fact that he's also just mixed in general is saying a lot too. It's not just that he could have just as easily been a black Spider-Man, but they decide to merge the culture. And one of the things I think right now in 2020 is the perfect time for a movie like this, because that's kind of what we're seeing. There's a lot more kids being raised who are mixed, who are half this, and it's more reflective of what we as a society are looking like. And so it's very hard to sometimes to just have one specific blanket statement for this culture on a character. So I think it's awesome.
Let's see. In the chat, Lux is saying, my 6-year-old sister has shared she wishes she was pale and blonde. She watches a lot of Disney princess movies and kids shows like that. Makes me really sad. I wish there was more representation. Oh gosh, that's awful. Jake is saying, I feel like this is one of the big child animations since Princess and the Frog, and I'm glad they were able to make him not just black. Yeah, that's a really big difference. I mean, my kids are mixed, and I talk to them about it every now and then. They haven't really said anything really specific to me about that, but I just wonder how that is going to affect them, because I have students who are mixed, and they do talk to me about some of the issues that they have to contend with a lot of the time. Like I've had students who say to me things like, yeah, I tell people that I'm half Asian and they don't believe me, even though I have an Asian name, which is pretty obviously Asian. And it's really sort of surprising the way people just won't believe you if you don't look exactly the way they think you should look, right? I don't know if that made any sense.
No, I get that. I have cousins like that.
Okay, let's see. Let's move on to the next character. So let's talk about Up, which was an animated film from Pixar. And Kat, why don't you give us the plot summary? Because it's been forever since I watched this movie.
Well, same, but I'll try my best. Up is about an elderly man who wants to go on an adventure in memory of his wife. And so how he does it is by inflating hundreds of balloons and making his house like fly to was it South America? I don't remember anymore. And Russell is a small Boy Scout who happens to be on his porch when the house takes off. So he inadvertently gets dragged into this whole adventure.
Let's see. And Jordan, why do you think Russell matters as a character?
Well, from the story perspective, he just makes the story really light and just makes it so much more fun. Because I'll be honest, if I was just watching Carl Fredricksen the entire hour and a half movie, I might walk away a little depressed because he's just this grumpy old man, and even his character design, he's made up of a bunch of squares and stuff, and he's just like. But Russell, he's so lighthearted and fun, and the whole point of his character, he just wants to help the elderly to get his badge, and he's just like, Mr. Fredricksen, can I help you get across? And he's so energetic and so much fun, and he's the perfect person to go with him on this journey because he knows all the survival stuff, you know. So it's like a match made in heaven. And I adore this movie. I remember just laughing so hard in the theater watching this.
Well, and so, Kat, when you look at Russell, do you think, in the context of the plot, that it's important that he's specifically Asian, because I feel like there are some movies where it's like that's actually part of the plot, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. But in this one, I don't know that his race matters that much. I mean, couldn't he have been any race and it would have still been the same story?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think his race was a big part of the plot, but I think it was a really good, first of all, design decision and also really good representation just like for the world. And the reason why it's a good design decision, I think, is because can you imagine a grumpy old white man and like a bubbly, cheerful, like 7-year-old Asian kid together? Like that's such a weird pairing that I think it really makes up that much more fun. And I think I really enjoyed Russell being Asian because like it's so matter of fact, like you can see it. He's clearly Asian. And it's just like he exists, yes. And it doesn't have to be a huge plot point. They are out there. We are out there.
In the chat, Sophie Lier is saying, at Lux, so sad. My nieces are Caucasians, but they are bullied because they are redheads. Seriously, nothing is good enough. And Christina is saying, especially in the 70s when I was a child, there was zero diversity in animation. Blonde and blue eyes was the standard of beauty. Sophie's saying, we just have to accept ourselves. And Casey Kelly is saying, the music in Up makes you cry by itself from the intro to the man in Up. Okay, I see. Actually, there's this one sequence, Jordan and Kat, I don't know if you guys remember, but it's the beginning where the old man, they have this like 1 minute sequence where the old man lives his life with his wife from beginning to end.
Mhm.
Oh my God, like I have never been that moved by a single animation clip before. Maybe it was the part about the wife having a miscarriage and how
Mhm.
beautiful and subtle that was. I feel like in a lot of places that would have been handled so badly, but it was so subtle. I was really blown away by that. Okay, let's take a look at Russell's outfit as a character. He wears a lot of stuff. And he's got this funny, I guess, spunky looking hair. So, how about his design as a character, those visual decisions? Jordan, what's your take on that?
So like I think I mentioned before, the whole purpose of his character, he's this scout explorer type of character, and he just wants his assisting the elderly badge. And I think his whole character design just tells you exactly what he needs. Like, even down to where the badge is placed. We actually talked about this in one of my classes not too long ago. The badge that he's missing is placed over his heart. And when at the end of the movie, when he actually gets the badge, it's the grape soda bottle cap that Ellie gave Carl Fredrickson, and it's, you know, and that represents his heart. That this is love, and so that whole connection right there, just something so simple about where to place the badge, is just so beautiful. It has so much meaning, but they never. It's not like they're going, "Hey, I'm missing a badge. It's right on my heart." No one's doing things like that. They're not obvious, and I think what I appreciate about this movie is that Pixar is smart enough to realize how smart the audience actually is. And so all they have to do is say, "Hey, he's a Boy Scout. Give him his little ascot and his, you know, shirt and giant backpack, and just let the movie tell the rest of the story." You know.
All right, looks like a
I
lot
think
of
I
people in the
also
chat are getting a little choked up thinking about this movie. Christina says, I cry within the first 5 minutes, and Anika wants to cry right now. Yep. Oh, my goodness. Okay, let's move on to an older movie. This is from the 90s, the olden days. This is The Prince of Egypt. And Jordan, I'm going to let you explain this one because I know that this movie was very influential to you as an artist, right?
Yeah, I actually didn't see this movie until my sophomore year in college for some reason, and I kept hearing about how great it was. And the movie is basically about Moses and the Exodus. So it's a story that's thousands of years old. I'm sure everyone has heard, you know, 10 plagues in Egypt and all this stuff. And so that's really what the movie's about. And the journey that he takes is really interesting because it's like he's going from an Egyptian prince to recognizing that he's a Hebrew, and you can see so many changes throughout his design throughout the film that indicates that. And I just find this film to be really, really special for that reason.
Kat, when did you see this movie?
Maybe middle school or high school. Not sure, but probably earlier than
What
Jordan.
was your first impression of this movie?
Oh, it's beautiful. That was my first impression. And second of all, I think it was so um I think it belongs in like the history of animation, honestly. Because first of all, it's beautiful. Second of all, it really shows different kinds of people during that time and accurately as well, because not a lot of people depict Moses as this like bearded guy who's European or white. But, Moses came from the continent of Africa. Like, I don't think he's going to be that pale. And I think this film really portrays different like shades of brown of people. And I thought that was so cool when I first saw it.
Let's see. In the chat, Trans Rebelled is saying, I actually researched trans and gender nonconforming positive representation in children's media. And it's so crucial to have that representation and to simply be and not be a whole tragic plot point. Yeah, that's a great point. Jordan, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that when it comes to creating characters, it's so easy to if you're making a character that's specifically built for a plot around this issue, a certain issue, then that's fine. But I feel like most of the time it's done just to serve a specific audience. So it's like, oh, we'll have this group come in because we have this one token character. And I think that for me is where the issue comes in. And it's not a matter of fact type of thing. It's just we need this for our ratings or for our, for this audience to come in. And that irritates me because that you can see that across all levels, whether it's gender, whether it's race, whatever.
And Kat, I was wondering because I know you did a comic, I think last year, that was about a Mexican family, and you're not Mexican. And so, as a artist, how did you go about doing that? Because let's say you want to make a story is about somebody who's not the same race as you. How do you take that responsibility and make sure you don't just totally screw it up?
There's no one right way to go about it, but there's a whole bunch of wrong ways. And I think I try my best to avoid as many wrong ways as possible. But again, like there's not like one answer to that. So the way I went about doing it was that I talked to as many people who were part of that culture as possible. So I had a lot of Mexican American friends that I interviewed. I also asked members of their friends and their family as well. And one thing I always made sure to ask in all the interviews is how do they feel about me writing this story? And most of the answers I got were actually pretty positive. They're like, we're so glad you're writing this story because we're not seeing it anywhere. And I thought that was my responsibility as a storyteller to tell truthful and respectful stories that are varied and real. And also, while I'm at it, just trying to find other sources and stories that I can support in the process as well. Like, I don't take like this is not my story, it's our story. I'm just helping to write it.
I mean, Jordan, as a character artist now, do you have any goals as far as representation in terms of the characters that you want to make, or is it something that's a little bit more intuitive?
Um, Really, I guess it depends on the story I'm working on. I definitely want to push the boundaries and push the envelope when it comes to specific designs. But the ultimate thing I don't want to do is I don't want um, my designs to feel inauthentic. I want them to feel like I put, like Kat said, like research and, a lot of time into this. And I'm not doing it just to be popular or to market a specific audience because I think that they'll give me more, success or whatever. It's just because it feels right. And so now, would I appreciate seeing more characters that look like me? Sure, of course. But I also don't have a problem seeing a movie that stars an all Asian cast. I have no Asian, I have no Asian family members at all, but I can enjoy the movie just the same. I'm sure that there are some things I may not get on a personal level because maybe I just didn't have that experience, but I could still enjoy it, and that goes for anything. And it really comes down to good storytelling.
Transrebelled is saying it's
And
interesting to see how transgender representation is portrayed in media. Some animators and artists decide to depict it like Rebecca Sugar and in such a positive way. Yeah, I haven't seen Rebecca Sugar's stuff, but I've had so many students recommend her to me in the past. I better go look her up. All right, we got a question from Noor. They are saying, should beginners start with drawing to learn proportions, form, shading, etc., before learning painting? I'm guessing you're asking in relation to character design. I'm sorry if I'm wrong about that, but Kat, why don't you take this? What do you think people should start with for character design? Proportion, shading, painting. Out of those three, which one do you think you really should prioritize?
First of all, just drawing what you see, I guess proportion. This is hard to say, but I think it's a really good thing to draw from life. Basically, going out into real world, like a park or a museum or something, and really drawing the people you see walk around. I wouldn't worry too much about like proportion, shading, painting, like all those fine details just yet. Just try to notice what makes another person different from another person. Like maybe the nose on someone else is longer than another person, or maybe their eyes are bigger than another person, or just like how are they reacting in the environment? Like maybe you can show what they're doing and their personality as well. But the point is, draw real people.
Well, because actually on the internet, you don't always see real people. You're seeing people who
Right.
have been styled to look a certain way. A lot of it's very artificial. And if you just go to a park, you just draw the people that are there, you're going to get people of all different ages, all different backgrounds, all different sizes and shapes. That's the way to do it. The internet is not a good reference for that. And I think what Kat said about talking to real people, don't just Google, oh, what's it like to live in Taiwan? You can't do that. You have to actually talk to somebody who's had that experience. And so I think really referencing real life, that is what's going to make your characters really believable. Let's see. Trans Rebelled is saying most accurate positive representation was when the creators personally identified as such or heavily researched and talked to people of the community. So kudos, Kat. And Nanika is saying, yeah, it's funny to see Jesus portrayed in paintings. Explain to me, how could Jesus be blonde and pale? I'm not, that's like 95% of the paintings in art history, he's white and pale. And Casey is saying, is the title of this video the same as yesterday's? Yes, it was. This is what happens when you've got Professor Lieu running the streams. You forget to change the title of the video. So sorry about that. And Diamond Cat is saying, sophomore in high school, next year I have a chance to take an AP art class. It is a class that helps you build a portfolio to submit to schools. Would it be beneficial for me to take the class? I think for sure. I mean, I don't think there's any art class you can take that is going to have a bad effect. Like you're not going to have like negative art experience. Jordan, what do you think about that?
I think just draw, paint whatever you can, and get as much experience as possible. Because if you if you settle too soon, you're going to miss all these opportunities that you can have in the future to really expand your growth process. So if there's any extra classes, any opportunities that you have, just go for it and figure it all out later. You know?
And we got a question from Dat Salty Person. What about the situation today, though? How can we draw if we can't go outside and observe? Kat, any good ideas? Because it's not that you can't use the internet as a reference. It's just that you have to know where to look. So, Kat, if you're stuck indoors and all you have is YouTube to reference, what would you look up? What type of video would you search for to find a broader range of people?
Actually, YouTube isn't the place I go to. It's actually Facebook. Especially when I was studying for my comic Mama Bruja, the Mexican American comic. I like have Mexican American friends, but I don't have that many. And so what I did was actually go on their Facebooks and then like research their friends and families through their profiles and then really study how they looked like and then drew from there. And that's basically my go-to whenever I need to draw a very specific person, is just go on Facebook.
Jordan, do you have any secrets for how to find real people online?
Honestly, I just go to Pinterest and I will just put in as many little things like I'm looking for an indigenous and I'll just put in like 8 little keywords and see what pops up, and I'll go with whatever feels closest. And if I need to adjust something, then I know I can always draw that in. Like that nose isn't wide enough. I'm not going to let 2 centimeters, in real life throw me off from my drawing. I'll just draw them with a bigger nose or something. So you're not going to get everything from the internet. Obviously, you're going to have to take some liberties, but the internet can do a lot of work for you.
You gotta know where to look, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
I hope you guys will explore our main site, artprof.org. We've got tons of resources there which are not available on our YouTube channel. And we hope that you will subscribe to our channel and join the Art Prof family. Thank you so much to our top patron supporters. You guys keep us up and running. And thank you to all of you for all of your thoughtful comments in the chat. I love the conversations we have here. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time. Bye.